Hello, my weird and wonderful people. Welcome back. And today we're going back to the basics. Now, what's the one thing you will ask any artist, and it will immediately make them feel like they've never had an ounce of talent and will have to completely start from scratch, and they all have a collective groan? Hands. The answer is hands. Everyone hates hands. They're weird. They're nothing like anything else that we see in the animal kingdom. It's hard. So this is not a foolproof guide. This is just how I've learned and how I do hands, and just might be a good way to add to different ideas of how to add to your collective arsenal, so to speak. Whenever you learn something new, references. References are extremely important. Something else to note with hands, the basics, is squares. Start simple, stupid. Kiss. We all know kiss. We like kisses, don't we? For those of us who are not arrow ace and a romantic, I see you, I'm with you. But start basic. Squares and lines and circles. The palm of your hand will always be a rectangle. And something else to note is the middle finger will always be slightly further than the rest of the joints before they fall back down. That's why you'll see me do these pyramids on and off again on my models to remember that point. I also like to add beans. That's right, beans! Beans are my secret for hands and paws and wings and stuff, but we'll get to paws and wings later. I like to have something at the end of the shape to actually have mass, so I don't just go immediately to a just straight line and lose. I like adding claws, but I like to add in claws properly. With these references, try not to trace directly off them. Try to see how the angle and how far that is from a point of interest, like the knuckles or the wrist. Because the more you do it, and the more you do it wrong, means you're going to have more practice in getting it done right. So here you see I'm doing a very quick attempt on trying to replicate a very complicated design for hands. Starting on where the wrist meets with the fingertips, how far the fingertips are from that, the angle with it, and trying to keep it loose, very loose. It's important when you're starting with references and learning, you keep it loose, because if you get really fixated on those fine points and the little details, your proportions are going to go out the window. Fists are very easy. It's just another square. Square on top of a square, just add a triangle for that second knuckle and just add on to that. And as I'll show you later, proportions or not proportions, perspective, where something looks closer than it is all about size. But with anything, start with the basics of squares and circles, and my favorite, beans. You're going to hear this in your head for the rest of your life. Beans for fingers. Maybe you should not hear that for the rest of your life. With what I'm doing right now, doing proportion, or not proportion, pardon me, with doing perspective, the longer the beans are, the closer to the camera or the view they look. Whenever your fingers are curled up, they will typically go into a square rectangle shape because most of the phalanges are the same size. The phalanges, for those of you who don't know, my younger viewers, it's the bones of the actual joints themselves. Now, once we feel a little bit more comfortable with seeing just how far apart the fingers need to be, which is typically about 1/4 of the hand itself, and the thumb will always come to the first joint of the first finger. That's how you know where that ends. You can use much more loose shapes like mittens to get more of an idea of where to start with. Here we're going more of an in-depth construction of these cupped hands. I started with the squares, made sure that the middle finger was further out, and knew to put the tops of the thumb to the first joint of the index finger. Remember, this is flesh. Flesh is squishy. Flesh does not like hard shapes. So make sure to have some inorganic shapes. Make sure to add some bumps, especially where the flesh is colliding. Flesh. Our fingers also create, it's easier for our fingers to always crave to turn to the inside of the body, to the center of the body. It's very awkward and unusual when you see poses or anything like that of having fingers curl out to the outside of the body. So if it's, they like to turn towards each other, so to speak. That's just how our fingers naturally work. Also, remember there is a fat pad, not just in the inside of the hand, but on the outside of the hand, opposite of the thumb. Because if you forget that, like you're seeing with me here, I'm struggling with this hand, and it just looks awkward. And I'm trying to add fat pads and go back to the beans and break down the shape a little bit more. Also, you may notice that my proportion for my thumbs, I have a bad habit of making wrong, especially through this exercise because I'm so focused on the drawing and not the proportion itself. And sometimes you're going to hate it, but this is the reality of being an artist. Sometimes the best thing you do is start over. Erase everything, start from scratch. Sometimes the first idea is not the best idea, even though it's the one we've been spending the most time on. Beans can also be used as a way to have a better form of mass when your fingers are in positions that are not just the simple closed shape or fists. So having those longer beans for the center of the finger where the joint forms can be really good for adding proportion. As I'm showing right here, my thumb is the same size as the index finger. That's not right. The thumb from the wrist, from the wrist to the point of the thumb should be the same size as the index finger, but we don't see the inside of the wrist. So we only see about 2 joints, and that should be only about 1/3. Once again, the tip of the thumb should only come to the first joint of the index finger. And something else that I even had to remember with this, creativity does not like structure. It doesn't. If you start only with structure and try to work around it, it's very hard to do because it's so solid. So start creative. Start with a general idea of where your hand wants to go. Where is it pointing? What is it doing? What is the story behind why that hand is posted like that? Then add in the square and the beans and bring everything together afterwards. So I retried this hand with it flat on a surface, and I did the mitten idea of just a general shape, add in a curve for where the joints are supposed to be. Fun fact, the human brain loves subtle curves. Humans naturally go towards creativity, organic shapes. And having this curve where joints are supposed to align really helps with, remembering where each joint is supposed to be. Hands will baffle the best of us, the professionals, those who have been doing it for years. And it's a big part of showing where you are in your journey of where your hands are supposed to be. Surprise! You're supposed to be bad at them when you start. If you just started picking up a pencil and you can draw a realistic hand, go somewhere else. You're a monster. You can't just gain such a technical skill without failing. And once you get the properties down, you can actually see where the joints would land, where the bones would actually be, whether it's a cartoon or anime or realism. The point of art is to experience, not to do better than someone else, be better than what you were. And I struggle a lot with that. Hands are finicky. They're ruthless, and it's one of the first things that humans can see to tell if something's right or not. But if you can get it right, and if you copy your base and flip it over, you should be able to do an accurate re-representation of not just forward, but also from the back side. It takes a little bit to actually see, but from the back to the front, if you do a proportion right, then it should still look seamless. Something else to know is try to keep fingers, as much as the reference shape is straight, add some curves to your fingertips, subtle ones. because between our fingers, if you look, it's a very, very thin piece of flesh. We do not have a lot of muscle at all controlling our fingers. It's tendon. And as for different styles, the more simple and smooth lines typically come across as more of cartoonish. Meanwhile, more detailed or elongated and structured something is, the more closer to realism you will get. Remember that our hands are not just weird alien things. It's flesh and bone, tendon, and muscle and fat. And it's hard to do. Starting with the basics is easier said than done, because you can see how something's supposed to be in your mind. You can see how you want it to get there, and it's the most frustrating thing ever as an artist when it doesn't get there. And you just gotta break it down. Simple shapes, squares, circles, and beans. Once you've gotten that down, then you can start stepping up, adding for thinner fingers for an elderly person, smaller, stubbier fingers for children, for ages and gaps. Remember, the square that is your palm is a 3D thing. And the more tilted the hand will be, the more of the side you'll see, and it's just a lot easier to keep a consistent mass if you make it a 3D square. We remember those from school, right? It's also, for me, I find easier to do multiple passes with hands. I will start with red to get the general shape, blue for general outlines, and then a third color or black for the outlining. That's just how my mind works. The thumb pad, which is the big muscle part of the hand, and then the muscle part beneath the pinky finger, will always usually come to the center of the wrist. So that's a good kind of idea of where your muscles should be going if you ever need to exaggerate or move on with that. Our thumbs typically start in squares as well, down closer to the wrists. And our thumbs do still have 3 joints, even though we only see 2. And a lot of artists, myself included, will forget about that 3rd joint and make it look very stubby. Experiment. Try. And the best advice I can give to new artists, and even older artists who still need to hear this, be kind to yourself. There are so many things in this world that's stressing you out, and art should be stressful because if it's something worth... Hands have stories. Think of it like that. Why is the hand moving like that? Why would your thumb be out that far? The human mind really enjoys simple shapes to start with. If you're struggling with hands, remember kiss. Remember? Kisses? We like kisses? Mwah, mwah, mwah. Keep it simple, stupid. And even if you're doing other styles of shows, like very cartoony rounded fingers of Teletoons, or the very popular style right now with the Has-Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss, where their fingers are just one shape with just pointed fingertips, you still need to know how to do this stuff. With coloring hands, lighter skinned people we don't have to worry about as much. We get a slight blush on the tops of our knuckles and the tips of our fingers, and then the more beautifully melanin folks have a beautiful slight variation of color on the palms of their hands and the fingertips, which is about 2 shades lighter, but don't make it gray because that'll just be ashy, but 2 shades lighter for hands. And just see where things go. There's my continuous rambling of hands and how I do hands and where to go from that. Let me know what the hardest part for you guys find is hands. And once again, biggest thing, squares and beans. Squares and beans are your friends. And references. Please, if you don't know how to do that hand in the position, look at your own. Look at references. Please, references are going to be your best friend. All right, guys, stay safe and sane, and bye. Do